So there was the original strain of COVID-19. Then there was the alpha strain, which was 50% deadlier. And now there is a delta strain, which is 50% deadlier than the alpha strain. Where do we go from here? Let's head to Abuja for this conversation.
Thank you, Ayo. We have with us in the studio Dr. Yaya Disu, who's the head of Risk Communication Division at the National Center for Disease Control. And we also have Dr. Kiela Ishako, who's a virologist and also public health epidemiologist, and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this particular strain is causing a panic, it would seem. And some states, Lagos State in particular, has declared a third wave. It's a third wave here. Let me start with you from the NCDC.
Anyway, before now, we knew third wave was going to be inevitable. Third wave is just about, at some point, you have decrease in the number of cases. At another time, you start having rise in cases. And then by the time you look at the number of cases from the beginning of the outbreak declaration, and you will see the first wave, the peak, and then the trough, then you see the peak again, second. So the third one is starting. But what is important is what we're able to do to ensure that the height of that wave, as in the amplitude, we're able to reduce it, and then it doesn't go, I mean, the width is also contracted. So that is determined by whatever we're going to do. But for us to say we're going to avoid the third wave, yeah, it is not possible. So it's better we face the reality, we're able to do what we need to do to stem this. So it's here, cases are coming up now.
Do we really need to be scared of this third wave because of this Delta variant? I mean, from what you have heard and read, we understand that 2 people lost their lives 2 days ago in Oyo State. It's already taken the lives of 2 people already. What measures do you think we should be putting in place right now? Because, I mean, as one of the respondents in that report did say, we've since stopped contact tracing, and this is going to be a bit clumsy right now. But with this particular strain, how much caution should we be applying right now?
Yeah, so thank you for the platform, and thank you for having us. As an addendum, I just want to add to what my brother, Dr. Disu, said. So epidemiologically, we have what is called the EPID curve. So it is a curve that looks at the number of active cases, whether they are increasing or declining. You can actually look at this EPID curve and actually come up with strategic actions to be able to mitigate or be able to control this EPID curve. So we are on a third wave. This is because we open our borders. Issues of surveillance has declined. Issues of adherence to non-pharmaceutical measures have actually declined. People don't also observe mass gathering again. We are saying 50 people, you go to our worship centers, you see thousands
50% capacity.
You see 50% capacity. You see a lot of people congregating. It's only in Lagos and Abuja you see a few people walk with their face masks, and people don't also use hand sanitizers. And so we open our borders. Truly, we're on the third wave. The first wave is the drivers for the first wave was issues of misinformation, issues of people not believing that COVID-19 was real. So we had the first wave. And then the issues of non-pharmaceutical measures and lockdown actually managed the first wave. The second wave came, and then, we could not also manage it within December, January 2021. So there are a lot of sporadic rising in number of cases, number of mortality rates increase. And then we'll also be able to manage it with robust advocacy, just like what my brother is doing. And then also the issues of vaccination came in to be able to tame the second wave. But the third wave is that we have a new variant. We need to get concerned, and that's what your question is all about. We need to really get concerned. This is because in WHO classification of variants, we have variants of interest and variants of concern. So the Delta variant is not a variant of interest. alone is a variant of concern. This is because of the transmissibility. In fact, in other cases like Sydney, in countries like Sydney and France and Finland, they have now epidemiologically from the data seen that the transmissibility is above 50%, it's about 70%. You also need to look at the severity of the diseases. So what calls for concern is that we need to, government in particular need to push forward first, and then all of us need to queue in behind government and to actually see how we can re-strategize our measures that we have taken before. It is quite key.
When you say that the transmissibility is above 50% and almost at 70%, what exactly do you mean? Is it that somehow it tends to live longer, or somehow it is lighter and so can travel faster? Is there all those conversations initially when COVID broke about how, no, it cannot travel in vapor, so later on it became that it could travel in vapors, and, you know, there were all of that conversation. So when you say it is highly transmissible, what precisely do we mean?
So epidemiologically, you need to look at the incubation period. So if you look at transmissibility, you need to look at the probability of transmission, one, and also look at the incubation periods. The Delta variant has a very shorter incubation period and affects individuals within a larger population much more faster than other variants, like the Alpha variant, the Delta variant. Like in the UK now, it accounts for over 82%, the Delta variants. So the transmissibility, it came, you know, some few weeks ago, but the number of cases that you know, are being infected by the Delta variant is quite high. So it has a very short incubation period, and the cluster of transmission, the probability, that's what we call the probability of transmission within a population, is very, very huge. It's very, very large. So, yeah, so that is what is meant by that.
There have been talks that this particular variant is not easily detectable. By that, sometimes they do tests. It's like it doesn't just stay in the nasal area or the what they call that now, the breathing area of the body. I don't know whether I'm getting the terms right, but I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. That it travels almost immediately to the lungs. So sometimes the signs and symptoms of an infection are already there before it is detected. How correct is that? Is it true?
Anyway, I think our emphasis should be on whether it is Delta variants or not, because when somebody is infected with a particular variant, you don't know, and it may be anything. And it's on protective measures. What do we need to do to protect against getting this virus at all? Because if we begin to look at, oh, yes, this happens so fast, and then people start thinking that, okay, this could be this, they said this comes with this kind of symptoms or whatever. But the reality is, just like every organism, we find a way to survive. There's what we call, there is this survival tendency, no matter what barrier any organism is facing, but it wants to beat whatever that barrier in order to continue to live, just like human beings too. So that way, the virus will find a way to adapt, to mutate, to beat whatever mechanism that you have in place. So, and that means we as humans, we need to be smarter. We need to use all that within our control to enable to fight this. So the reality is, yes, it's more difficult to detect in the sense that you cannot, when you do the test, normal test you do, you won't know whether this is Delta variants or what, unless they do genomic sequencing. And that is why the NCDC now said, oh, all positive cases, they need to do genomic sequencing for us to be able to know which variants are we dealing with, since we have variants that are highly transmissible across the world. And that is the reason why we're able to detect what we have even detected recently. What we're even doing is to also do retrospective sequencing, samples that have also been collected in the past. That will give us insight whether we're having community transmission or not. And then
of this particular variant.
Exactly, right? Yes, because investigations are all going. And for us to be able to know the extent of spread so that we'll be able to tailor our intervention to this. But generally, we just need to let people know that preventive and social measures, prevention and these non-pharmaceutical interventions, they are key. Wash your hands and then avoid going out if it is not necessary, as in wear your face mask. social distancing, and then if you are showing symptoms, then you need to report. And the 6232 is there for us to call. UN Nigeria, in collaboration with Government of Nigeria and European Union, we launched a HANDS campaign. HANDS is an acronym that emphasizes those non-pharmaceutical interventions. And then again, it's a long-term social and behavior change. And this was done in anticipation of the third wave. Although we focused first on high-risk states, 7 of them, and now the plan is to scale it up to other states, particularly with these variants. So it requires all of society approach. That is what we need to emphasize now, because this is where we need all our religious leaders to be on board, the local government, community-based organizations, the market women. Everybody needs to come to work together. These campaign materials are available, and then we will share with them. And there are 3 components of this: the media campaign, which was launched late in May, and then the school campaign. There's a jingle, something that looks like cartoon, Captain Bubble, in the states where this is being implemented. So they are working with schools and with the school authorities to ensure that this gets to students.
Interestingly now, schools are on holiday. And I think it is going to be a bit difficult to, maybe not so difficult. It's a good thing that the campaigns have been launched. But as we are all aware, you know, a lot of people had already abandoned the non-pharmaceutical interventions. In fact, oftentimes face masks are worn as a passage of entry into official government institutions or places that require that you wear a face mask. After you get in there, oftentimes you even find those who work there, you know, their face masks are off. So if that is the situation right now, how do we begin to convince people of the urgency of the situation? Now, there is a new strain in town, which is because if it's COVID, people will say, not be COVID, it has been around for a long time and we have not died. So how do we begin to tell people that it is COVID, but there is another strain right now and this one is even more dangerous and can easily take lives? You know, how do we begin to press the urgency of that particular message home? I don't know if any of you would like to intervene on that. Let the NCDC have it.
Like what we're doing now.
Yes.
This is part of what we're supposed to be doing. Informing Nigerians, educating them, and then again to ensure that like National Orientation Agency, they have always been part of the process. We plan together, we work together, and then especially at the state level, they work with the State Ministry of Health, the State Health Promotion Officers, and ensuring that they do campaign. Now that we have new information, this is being communicated to everyone, and then there will also be need for training or even the media personnel, and then for them to know how to report, what to report, and how to get more information when they need it. The established channels, processes that we're using to get information across to them. Our microsites are information that are available, and then they can access. And when they have things they don't understand, they call us, and we have platform where we relate. And then religious leaders, for instance, also in March, the Message of Hope project was launched. And that is, the idea is for religious organizations to take ownership of these messages. And then they
I hope you're not just relying on the media to get the message to the religious organization.
We're working with the religious organization. For instance, USCDC is also supporting this. And then they engage Caritas Foundation and NIFA, Nigeria Interfaith Action Association, as made up of both members from Supreme Islamic Council of Nigeria, CAN, and so on. Okay. And so that is ongoing. Now we are communicating this with them. More importantly, Salah is coming, and where people just travel, and that even makes the risk higher in villages, in different parts of the country. So we need to warn people. They don't need to travel. If it is not necessary, you can celebrate where you are. Even this is not the time we go to mosques in large numbers, and then this is the time we really need to be very cautious. So we're working with the religious organization.
That's going to be very difficult, don't you think?
Yes, but then we need to continue to tell. You know, the second wave in Nigeria started because of Christmas, because people travel for Christmas. So we can avoid this. We can learn from this. A life that we lost is very, very important for every one of us. It could be anybody. So it is not worth it to lose a life because we want to celebrate Salah or Christmas or whatever.
I'm wondering, for those who have been vaccinated, I think that they have the biggest confusion right now because they imagine that, you know, when we got the vaccines, we thought, you know, eureka and hallelujah, it's a done deal. All you have to do is get your vaccines first and second shot. And we celebrated that, as we rightly should. Yet, we're told that even those who have gotten the vaccine still need to wear a mask. You know, you still have to do this test every time you travel or you go anywhere. Really, what effect would you say, if any, that vaccination has had on the spread of this virus?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. So it is a very, very good question, and let me have a paradigm shift to say that as a country during the COVID vaccination, we actually did the vaccination in isolation. The reason why there was a non-compliance to non-pharmaceutical measures was because we started the vaccination and then we did not push down, aggressive advocacy on the use of non-pharmaceutical measures. So I was discussing with some friends yesterday, I said, and we all agreed that the issue of the COVID vaccination has actually lowered down a lot of non-adherence. Instead of, people begin to ask just the way you asked, if we take vaccines, why do we still need to wear face masks? This is a new disease. The pathophysiology, everything about COVID is new. We are still studying it. Even advanced countries are still studying it. So why do we still need to? Now, but this brings to bear the national question. Have we actually done a vaccine efficacy test platform? Did we also set up platforms to actually monitor these vaccines? I was here last time to talk about vaccine injury, whether we had vaccine commission, domicile. And I was sharing with my brother, I said, even in the presidential task force, we're supposed to have a vaccination pillar as a component so that we have a daily reporting. So we don't do that. So people that got vaccinated, how are we sure that they have produced enough immunity towards the vaccines? How are we sure that the vaccines that left the storage facility, when they got to the field, they have not lost their potency? How are we sure that our genetic makeup do not interfere with the vaccine immunity? So those are the questions that the National Primary Healthcare with NAFDAC need to come up, and also with NCDC, to begin to answer these gray areas, these questions that we actually need to actually share with the citizens of Nigeria. So I agree with you that if we take vaccines, why do we still need to use face masks? We still need to use face masks because non-pharmaceutical measures are one of the best public health and social measures we can actually employ to actually tame this virus. So it is very important that even after we take our vaccines, we should be able to, employ the non-pharmaceutical measure. But we need platforms to actually check vaccine efficacy. My brother will agree with me that there is what is called seroconversion. So we need to actually, look at how many people got vaccinated, how many people had a threshold of antibodies that can be able to withstand this. The good news is that most of the vaccines that we have in-house can be able to handle even the new variants. So that's the good news. So, but the issue is that the vaccines are not enough. And people, we have not yet vaccinated up to 20 to 30% of the population. So we still have huge number of, we still have population at risk. So I strongly believe that we still need to do more advocacy, just like the way he said, and then we still need to do a lot of, activate our surveillance system again, to be active, not passive, and then be able to see how we push on this.
In addition to that, and I think countries that have done enough vaccination, as in they have significant proportion of their population vaccinated, we can see that the drastic reduction in transmission and then the severity, that is death of COVID-19. So vaccines are effective, no doubt about that. But one thing we also need to understand is this pandemic is evolving with different dimensions and a lot that we did not know from the beginning. And then when it comes to vaccination, there is a lot of misinformation out there, and even before it came to Nigeria. That might explain the reason why there was focus on vaccine to deal with hesitancy, right? And then because it's something that is global, that influence is not just coming from Nigeria alone, but from outside Nigeria. This is a reality we have to deal with. We're learning, and I know we're also talking about integrating messaging, both NPI and vaccination, and then working together with NPACD and all the relevant stakeholders, National Orientation Agency, even Ministry of Information is involved in this. We're learning, and then from that lesson, then we see how we can improve on that. So we're building the ship as we are sailing it.
Also, so let me add, also the success story for France. France just came up with a mandatory policy now that all health workers must be vaccinated. And I think that we need such kind of policy in this in our country. This is because they are also a vulnerable set of people.
They were prioritized here.
Absolutely.
Initially.
But not all of the health workers, you know, but now...
Some of them were hesitant?
Yeah, a lot of health workers were hesitant. In fact, even most of the misinformation came from the health workers. It is for sure, yeah. So I think if we come up with mandatory policies, which are quite good, and be able to see how we can be able to manage the psyche of health workers, it will go a long way. And then, so the president of France said that, it is mandatory for all health workers. This is because they are group at risk, both internally and externally. They can be able to pick the virus from the hospital community and then, transmit it to, communities outside the hospital, or pick it from the communities outside the hospital and transmit it, and the concept of what we call nosocomial infection within hospital community. So it is quite key. So I think we need to re-strategize our policies and begin to see how we can come up with mandatory policies. We have reached the stage now where we need to actually bring mandatory policies.
It's very interesting, this story of vaccines, because, I mean, I just heard as we're building the ship, we're sailing it. What a lot of people will get from what you have just said is that largely, even though we're told that the vaccines, could be ready in such a short time and could be administered, we're still in the experimental stage. That's what it largely means.
No, let me explain that. What I'm saying is for the pandemic, overall, there's a lot that was not known from the beginning, and over time we continue to learn and we continue to adjust our intervention.
That's what experiments are about, isn't that?
We are still, the pandemic has not ended, and nobody can tell you that exactly this is the way to contain this so
that pandemic. That's an experiment.
Yes, that's it, because it's a global experiment. The reason I say that is, otherwise, there would have been issue of Delta variant, Alpha variants, imagine. And so we continue to adjust and until we get it right. We bring it down to the level that is not of public health importance. So
what we need to confirm right now is whether or not the vaccines that have been administered are, I don't want to say powerful enough, but maybe, for lack of a better phrase, powerful enough to combat whatever variant should crop up, say, today or tomorrow.
So, like I said to you, countries where they have vaccinated massively, they have seen significant drop in transmission. So which means, irrespective of the variant, the vaccines work. So whatever we have, we should make use of that. And by the time we start assuming that it may not work, it may not, so what options do we have? So the reality is vaccines work from countries that are using this vaccine, but then in our own situation, because we don't manufacture vaccine, and that is the challenge that we are having, we depend on importation. And then, of course, we know what happened in India. If not for that, we will have, gotten more doses, and more people will have probably been vaccinated. And the hesitancy from healthcare workers, it can be genuine, because they are in the front line, as in they are the one facing the bullet. So, but then what we need is engagement. There was even a time we did a survey, a perception survey among the healthcare workers through the Presidential Task Force platform, and then we're able to get information why they wouldn't want to take the vaccine. And another commission, one was also commissioned. So based on that information, we continue to work. Now more healthcare workers are coming up to take the vaccine. It's always like that in every society. There is this behavior model, as in people who accept early, people who adopt behavior early, people who adopt late, people who never adopt. So healthcare workers are also human beings. But what we need is continuous engagement. And then
we'll let you shed a little more light on that when we come back. We really need to go to break. There'll be a little more clarity when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Dr. Yaya Disu, Head of Risk Communications Division at the National Center for Disease Control, and also Dr. Akiela Ishako, who is a virologist, public health epidemiologist, and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University, are still here with us in the studio. We're talking about COVID-19, and especially with emphasis on this new variant. Let's take it to Lagos now, where my colleagues have questions for them.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Dr. Disu, I'd like to stay with this conversation around vaccines and the Delta variant just a little bit longer. I recall that Pfizer recently was seeking emergency approval for a third jab of vaccine to especially protect against this Delta variant. Even AstraZeneca, there was a report, I think about 2 weeks ago, showing that a third jab actually raises immunity to the peak after 6 months of the second dose. So clearly, there's still a lot of, you referenced that, still a lot of research. But regarding this Delta variant and our vaccination drive, what do we know so far, especially in the Nigerian context?
Well, with regards to the Delta variant, we're just reporting it in Nigeria. There are investigations that are ongoing. At least we also got reports from Oyo State to find out the extent of this. And I'm sure those of us who have gotten the vaccine, and then they will also look at them, what's the proportion of those people who have the vaccines that have this virus. I'm sure that study will be done somewhere. There is a seroprevalence study that is ongoing across the nation. They are moving from state to state now. We may be able to get some information about the prevalence of this disease. But with regards to the variant, information is still very new. And then I know scientists, experts, we need to come together to see how to better understand how effective these vaccines are with these new variants in the country. But what is more important, like we are saying, what we have for time that we need to use now is our NPI, non-pharmaceutical intervention. Which is why we appreciate what you are doing, because the media has a role to play in this. Our sister agency, NPACDA, that is leading on the vaccination campaign, and I'm sure they are not sleeping, and then they are also aware of these variants, and they will do what is needful for us to know how to adjust whatever our intervention.
Well, let me take that same question to Dr. Ishako, only with this adjustment. Earlier, about even before the Alpha variant was as prominent as it became, there were concerns even among health professionals on the efficacy of the vaccines, which were made to address the original strain of COVID-19. Now, this new one is a lot more lethal, you tell us, 100% more lethal than the previous, the original strain, so to speak. So the question then is, how effective, I think you referenced this earlier, how effective then can we say the vaccine, the original vaccine, or rather the vaccine made for the original strain would be against this Delta variant or any other variant that will come? We hear from World Health Organization and other multinationals that it is effective, but then is that in the realm of speculation or it's in the realm of certainty?
Yeah, it's in the realm of certainty outside our system, but it is in the realm of speculation in our system. And so these are my points. Let me share a story within seconds. I was privileged to start a postgraduate program 7 years ago in one of the countries in Europe. So they asked me, have you taken yellow fever vaccine and hepatitis B vaccine? I told them yes. They still went ahead to take my blood sample and then be able to check whether I have developed antibodies or I have developed immunity towards either yellow fever or hepatitis B. They gauge the threshold of that antibody to actually ascertain whether my body immune system has actually developed antibody. Funny enough, I took hepatitis B vaccine, but the threshold was not enough. So the advice was that I need to take another dose of the hepatitis B vaccine. I was glad when a documentary was played before this section that our success story at the end of the first phase. But we need to ask a national question. How efficacious is this vaccine in Nigeria? What are the adverse reactions that we have gotten feedback from people that took these vaccines? Have we done vaccine efficacy tests on people that took this vaccine? So it is done. If you give somebody one jab or the second jab, it is done in the US and all part of Europe. You take their blood samples. You check for their antibody titer, whether they have developed antibodies to this. Have we done that? Because we must be able to do that to be able to establish that actually these vaccines are efficacious.
Perhaps,
to me, I don't think we have such kind of platforms. And I wish to encourage agencies to look into that direction and actually fund research in that line. So let's get people that took the vaccines. In fact, we would have even gotten people that registered for the vaccine prior to taking the jab for the first dose, collect their blood samples to check whether they have developed antibodies or not. And then, once they take the first and the second jab, we also take their blood samples, randomly, because Maokwe said that we are actually experimenting. So I agree with that postulation and that premises that she stood. Actually, COVID-19 is a new virus, and we are studying it. And just like this, you say, it is emerging. So it is on that ground that we can be able to say that significant percentage of Nigeria took this vaccine, and they developed certain percentage of threshold of the antibody to COVID, and so we can categorically say that this is it. So 21st century medical sciences is run by data and quality data that we can be able to have an informed decision to be able to come up with policies.
Perhaps the question you asked, Dr. Ishaku, can be answered by Dr. Disu right now. I mean, if Dr. Disu, if you can respond to what he has said about whether or not we have checked to see how efficacious the vaccines have been on those who have taken it.
Oh, that's exactly what I was trying to explain. Okay. And we may need to do a survey for us to get that information. And I'm sure the agency that is in charge of vaccination, and then they are already, they will be thinking about what to do to commission a survey. But I explained something. There are other ways by which you will know whether this vaccine is working, apart from taking blood samples or to check antibodies. Clinical evidence, like looking at those who take the vaccines and those who come down with the illness. And those are simple analyses that can be done. Maybe they can just do a survey to ask people, have you taken the vaccine? And then compare to whether they have come down with the illness, the ailment. And then particularly, and it is when you come down with the illness that they will now do genomic sequencing. Now that we have said we want to be doing genomic sequencing for every positive case. And that can give us more information about what question that you are asking. And particularly, I said, there's a seroprevalence study that is ongoing in the nation. And then that will enable us to know how many people have developed antibodies against this. Although it's a little bit trickish, because you may not know whether it is for this Delta variant or for whichever one. But at least that will also give us information that will help us to ask more questions and then to know how to take that survey in the next direction. It is an emerging situation. So as it comes, experts come together, stakeholders, and then to devise a way to address the emerging needs.
But I've noticed a trend that when discussing issues of COVID-19 in the public space, you tend to see, especially officials, of government agencies saddled with fighting this virus, try not to go too deep with the scientific stuff, the transmissibility, the symptoms of this Delta variant, for example, whether it's easier to find in the, the respiratory tract or in the lungs, those kind of technical things. And rather you just say, well, at the end of it, the most important thing is the MPIs, wear your face mask, wash your hands, and ensure social distancing and the rest. Like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that deliberate? Are you trying not to put out too much scientific information out there so people, don't get, don't have all that swarming around their heads and they're not sure what to do about the information? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Thank you very much for that. And one thing about information is, it is the perspective of the person hearing this. It is what they want to see, and there is what we call selective hearing. You need to also be careful. Sometimes when you are explaining into details, people will forget the major thing, the basic things that they need to do, and they will now be judging, probably because this is found in the lungs, and this is found in the throat. And that is not the issue. But then we still explain this. We are not running away from this, but as we are agreeing that this happens, but we also need to let people know that what you really need to protect against this virus, irrespective of the strain, is our non-pharmaceutical intervention. By the time you juxtapose that, they always remember that, okay, irrespective of the strain, how it is transmitted, but this is still the solution to it. Otherwise, somebody will not tell you that, okay, maybe this measure is not working, what else do we do? And you give room for misinformation. People will now start thinking of all manners of things, local remedies they need to use. So that's why we're trying to say that we're not running away from it. We agree with that. This is what has been stated, the fact that has been established. But then, this is also the facts that are the way to also address this, that simple measures that are already effective, that people already know, we also need to let them know that this is also effective. So that's what we are trying to do here. Right. It is not that we're running away from the scientific fact, but we're also trying to balance it for people to keep remembering that the solution is what is more important at hand for us. Leave the details to scientists, people who are in the lab, to do their job, but leave what people can do. Give it, allow them to know what they can do and do it.
Okay, so let me take this to Dr. Ishaku, because we've said time and again during the course of this conversation that we're learning along the way, really. You've said that it's a research, it's some sort of experiment. But the tricky part about this is the fact that people want information, and they'll get it by whatever means. I mean, there's Google available, and they want to do a deep dive. Yes, they didn't maybe study science in school, they probably don't have a science degree, but they want to really know from the very little microorganism phase to the bigger one. So people will definitely find out these information. So I know we're still learning, but how important is it to, lay all our cards bare? Like, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, this is what we know scientifically, this is what we don't know scientifically. Do you think that can also build some trust in this process?
This can build trust, but it will build trust. So I agree with you on that premises. In fact, I am a proponent of we need to have a paradigm shift to actually shift from the conventional way of passing out information to a way of passing out information that even a shoe shiner, even a cassava seller on the street, a market woman can be able to understand this. So this brings to the table that we need to actually re-strategize even the way we communicate scientific communications. In fact, I was discussing with some members of Senate in my university, and I was sharing with them. I said, what stops us from allowing people that read journalists to actually take degree courses, postgraduate courses, and advanced diploma in scientific communications, and even in public health? So in this country, we restrict them from actually. So because this COVID has really exposed vulnerability in terms of transmitting, scientific communications. And a lot of times, journalists actually, transmit this information, scientific information, with distortions, and just like the way Dr. Disu said, selective perspective in terms of hearing, or even in terms of reading. So what we need to do as a country is actually sit down and to look at where we have gone wrong. Have we passed the right message? to the right audience? What is wrong with the injection of the message that we have passed? Are people reacting to the injection of the message we have passed? What is the feedback? We need to sit down and begin to see people like Kayode Ayo and Amaokwe to begin to actually take some modules courses in scientific communication, which you guys are doing great things, you know. But actually, journalists that are coming behind, they need to pass, because we have a lot of fake news. We have a lot of news, you know, platforms that dish out fake news, and their inability to communicate proper scientific message.
Okay, I wasn't quite a fan of science, so now that you put me on the spot, well, we could do that. But let me take this back to you know, Dr. Diso, and find out in terms of, you know, education, awareness, and the rest. This Twitter suspension, I mean, the NCDC had quite a following on Twitter, and there was a lot of engagement. In fact, a lot of people access information from the NCDC via Twitter. How much has this affected your information dissemination, the awareness, especially now that we're seeing a Delta variant and there's a lot of concern?
Okay, what we have done with the ban on Twitter, because we have over 2 million people following us on Twitter, is for us to quickly do evaluation of the impact or assessment of the impact of Twitter ban on what we do. And that enables us to understand how Nigerians are also following us on other social media platforms like Telegram, Instagram, and then Facebook. And then, but we are using more of those ones now. And then, so we only want to just encourage Nigerians that there are other social media platforms that we are present, where we are available, and where they can still access this information. Our website is also there, and our microsites when it comes to COVID-19, they are there. And then more of traditional media, we need more of that now. Now that people cannot get information easily from they can't get information from Twitter again. So our relationship with the traditional media will also help us to let them drive traffic to those platforms that are available for us. So if you also go to our website, you will also see a link that will direct them to those things. And then we're also looking at a long-term strategy in case this may happen to Facebook in future. What are we going to do so that we don't suffer that deficit? And again, but then we continue to, it's an imagined experience, and we continue to learn from that situation.
Well, some people say maybe well, it's a good thing you're already imagining all the different scenarios that could come up, you know, assuming the fates that befell Twitter also befalls Facebook. But some people will say maybe that's one of the reasons why you should engage with stakeholders to say, you know, this is one of the downsides of this. Can we review what is happening in this particular area? But as Kayode did say, you don't want to go too much into the science of this. But some people will say that Nigerians, you'll be surprised at how intelligent they can be. And so how sometimes this information might be able to help. Assuming, for instance, they're not properly diagnosed. With the knowledge that they have, they might be able to seek further or ask, you know, deeper questions of their doctors when it comes to diagnosis. And that's why we put out some of those questions sometimes. So I'd like you to, just for the sake of clarity, as we wrap up, you know, is it true then that it cannot be detected in the respiratory tract sometimes, this particular variant, because it travels easily and faster into the lungs?
Yes, from the published scientific data that we have. But in our own situation in Nigeria, because we still have very few cases diagnosed, we may not be able to know. But data will show that over time, or maybe in Nigerian context, this is how it is for us. So it's as simple as that.
We'll continue to keep in touch with the figures. We hope that they will go down.
Yes, because of what we do.
Yes.
By what we do, then we should not expect magic.
Are we going to do bigger testing samples to see just how fast this is going? Or
yes,
are we just going to keep waiting for people to present symptoms
before
we test?
Now, we are rolling out RDTs.
What's RDTs?
Rapid Diagnostic Test kits. And then that makes it faster because you can get your result immediately. And then we're working with the states, and we're encouraging them to expose people to do RDT, build capacity of different institutions, even congregation setting, even religious organizations. Maybe when they want to have programs, they can use this RDT. So we're working with the state to build capacity to make supplies available, and that is another way to make up for the long time that you have to wait for PCR to be ready. In a situation where RDT is positive, and then when maybe there is need for us to do confirmation with PCR, then that will be done. And before I go, in our training, when we do training for journalists or media professionals, there is a segment that we say, translating scientific information into understandable language. We normally take people on that so that the journalists can report accurately. We are mindful of that. But I'm just also talking from experience when I interact with people, and what is really important is what they drop. I'm not saying Nigerians are not intelligent.
Oh, yes, don't
so
get me
Nigerians are intelligent. So I also learn from what he has said, but I still want to say that we need to balance the information.
Thank you very much.
And when he was...
Gentlemen,
when my elder brother was...
We're out of time. If you can say it in 30 seconds, I'll let you. But we're totally out of time. I have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning and sharing insights. We do hope that the third wave, that, it will not be as bad as the second or the first, and that, Nigerians will take heed of some of the measures that you have already spoken about this morning. You talked about the hands campaign, and we do hope that people will continue to abide by the protocols. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise City. Dr. Yaya Disu is the head of Risk Communications Division at the National Center for Disease Control, and Dr. Akiera Ishaku is a virologist and public health epidemiologist, and also a senior lecturer at the Nasarawa State University. Once again, gentlemen, thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this segment. We will take a break. There's a lot of talk around security. We'll have some perspective on that when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.